everybody, it's Craig and Arun back with your Week 8 college football Saturday slate of games. It's Saturday, October 18th. Before we get to it, hey, let's take care of business. We've got a couple super specials for you. One, if you're a new customer, free $60, docsports.com/ICCT, right here on the bottom of the screen. Just type that link in, and you get a free $60 to check us out. Even better, if you're an existing customer, we give out 10% code every video. Today, for this week, 20% off, spicy20, as it is on the screen. Use that. So the week pass, it's $99 per capper for the football week, just $79 if you use that. If you want to use it on, say, the top plays that are 30, hey, they're just 24. So make sure you use that. It's good all the way up through Monday. So make sure you check it out. It's also good if you want the full season pass. It's not too late to get in on that discounted pass. All right, Eastern Michigan and Miami of Ohio kicking us off here for you, I see. It's a noon game. Not very far from me, where I'm in Cincinnati as we're recording this. Miami of Ohio is favored by 13, total of 47. What do you like here?
Yeah, I mean, I know how much of a fan you are of Miami of Ohio, and I kind of remember one of my last predictions I gave was FIU Western Kentucky, and I gave the total. You better believe I'm going to give the side because I should have just given FIU. They went outright like 25-6. I told you, there's so much value on this game. As it relates to Miami of Ohio here as they hook up against Eastern Kentucky. So the first thing I want to say is, let me pull this up here. Yeah, so you have Eastern Kentucky or Eastern Michigan, I should say, coming in as a 13-point dog on a total of 47. All right, so look, Eastern Michigan beat Northern Illinois 16-10. They are 2-5. They're facing a Miami of Ohio team that's 3-3. The one thing that you got to be impressed about with Eastern Michigan is they do come off a win. They only lost to Buffalo by 1. They were 10-point dogs. And Louisiana-Lafayette, they beat by 3, and they hung in against Kentucky. Sometimes these lines, Craig, don't make a lot of sense. Like most recently, the line with Liberty, right, in their contest that they had against New Mexico, is just because Liberty carried more of a weight on weekday ball games. That's the reason why they put them at -10, because nobody really knew about New Mexico State. So we really just have to go with what the numbers tell us. And Miami of Ohio is 3-3, big wins against Akron, Northern Illinois, Lindenwood. Obviously, they played UNLV really tough, losing by 3. They played Rutgers tough. Tough meaning they played Rutgers, and they lost to Wisconsin 17-0. These two teams met last year. Miami of Ohio won 38-14. But I got to tell you something. These points look, they look pretty appealing, right? Eastern Michigan returns 10 starters, 4 on offense, 6 on defense. Miami returns 13, 7 on offense, 6 on defense. I'm going to keep it simple here. I like Eastern Michigan here. I like the fact that they played Central Michigan and Buffalo pretty tough and beat Louisiana-Lafayette. I know Miami of Ohio comes off a big win against Akron. They've covered 3 straight in a row. And Eastern Michigan, remember, is getting throttled 38-14 last year. And I'm taking the points here, plus the 13. Keeping it simple there. All right, Craig, Baylor here, catching 3. Facing TCU on a total of 66. Baylor coming off that big wins against Kansas State and Oklahoma State. TCU coming off that loss against Kansas State as a -3-point chalk. Who do you like?
Yeah, it's weird that you see both teams playing Kansas State last, but Baylor was off last week. And, I usually teams off a bye, I kind of give them the extra look. I'm trying to find a way to play them, especially as underdogs. But if you look at this game, I think TCU, they were up big against ASU, let them come back. That loss really kind of stings, because if not, they just would be 5-1. And this is a wide open Big 12. All you got to do is win the Big 12, get to the Big 12 championship game. You get in and you win, hey, you're going to be in the playoffs. They have no room, either one of these teams. Whoever loses is out, in my opinion, getting to the Big 12 championship game. I like TCU minus the 3. I know Baylor's off a bye. I just think TCU at home is too much. They're 3-0 against the straight up at home, 2-1 against the spread. I think it improves this week against a Baylor's team that I just don't know how good they are. Early in the year when they lost to Auburn, I thought, well, maybe Auburn's good. Auburn's not good. And I think you're going to see it again. I think they struggle against a good offensive TCU. Next game, LSU and Vanderbilt, really good game here. Both these teams 5-1. Vanderbilt's favored by 2.5, total 49. I actually thought this was going to be a pick-up game. I'm a little surprised at Vanderbilt's favorite. What do you like?
A couple of things I want to point out to you. Vanderbilt rushed for 135 yards against my Crimson Tide. Okay, and that is pretty significant. So bear that in mind. I like the fact that Vanderbilt was tied against Alabama, 14-all at the half when Alabama had revenge against them. That's pretty significant too. Vanderbilt coming off a loss, their first loss of the year. They lost to LSU, if you remember, last year by just a touchdown. That's pretty significant too, right? So when you keep all of that in mind, they were only penalized for 5 times in their last game. LSU coming off that big win against South Carolina. They played Ole Miss really tough. I give them credit for that. Nice win against Florida and, of course, Clemson. Vanderbilt, if you look at Vanderbilt's resume closely, Craig, they really haven't beaten anybody, have they? Right? Take a close look here. They beat Virginia Tech, okay. They beat Charleston Southern, okay. They beat South Carolina 31-7, Georgia State, Utah State. I think Vandy knows how badly they need this game, okay? And I want you to know that LSU has Texas A&M on deck as well. I cannot lay off of Vanderbilt off of a loss with revenge, playing Alabama tough.
And a bye week, right? Weren't they off last week too?
Yeah. I mean, well, they October 4th, right? So they've had some extra time to prepare too. And LSU, of course, played on October 11th. But getting Vanderbilt on the money line makes perfect sense to me. Will it be on my card? Probably not. Will it be like a free play? Maybe. Because you got to understand that LSU also coming in as a 2.5-point dog probably feels pretty disrespected too. And by the way, did you ever imagine the day that Vanderbilt will be favored over LSU? It's been a long time since that happened, I'm sure. Vanderbilt, Craig, is ranked 17th. And by the way, don't forget, LSU is no chump either. They're ranked 10th in the country, and they're catching 2.5 points here. But I'm going to back Vanderbilt here. Craig, Connecticut comes in as a 1.5-point dog to Boston College in a battle in the Northeast over here. UConn coming off 3 big wins, by the way, FIU, Buffalo, and Ball State. Boston College is now 1-5. They're really struggling. Bad loss against Clemson, 10-41 last week. What do you like here?
I mean, they have one win, right? What is it, like real close at Michigan State at the time? We're like, oh, well, maybe this team is pretty good. No, they're not good. Not good at all. And this line tells you they're not good. I just thought on perception only with, Power 5 conference, Power 4 conference, what you want to call. I thought they would at least be a 3.5-point favorite. So 1.5, the news is out. BC stinks. Take Connecticut. Coach Mora has made this Connecticut team respectable. Now, I know they haven't really beat anybody yet. So they're just beating the teams they should beat. But I think this is a step up a chance for them. They don't have a lot of those opportunities. I think they get it done here. And like you said, this is a home type of game. So it's not like they're having to travel far distance. I think Connecticut.
And look, because he's made them respectable, he's going to keep those 2-star recruits now, right? They're going to have enough NIL. Instead of having 1-star recruits, they're going to have 2-star recruits. So, and maybe even
plus they're trying to they're trying to get into the Big 12.
Yeah.
That's been like a rumor for a little while. They had to get to a point where they're at least respectable in football. Correct. So I think they've done that. Let's take Connecticut as a small favorite. About that free $60 for new customers. Yes, you can get our absolute top plays for free if you're new. All you got to do is type into your URL docsports.com/ICCT as you see it on the screen. You'll get a free $60 to try us out. You can use it on anything on the website, including our top plays for the weekend. Good luck. Next game, Army and Tulane, another noon game. Tulane is a very good team. They have that one loss. Who was that too? Memphis, right? Memphis. Ole Miss, that's right. So they're 5-1 on the year, 4-2 against the spread. They're a big favorite here, -9.5 against an Army team that can score points at times. Total 46.5. What do you like?
Well, Army beat them 35-14 last year, so Tulane knows that. So bear that in mind. Then you have Army coming off that nice win against Charlotte, but they didn't cover. They were 17.5-point chalk coming in. Army did play North Texas close, which I give them credit for. They're 3-3 coming in. Tulane, though, they lost to Ole Miss badly, but they beat Duke. They beat South Alabama. They beat Northwestern. They beat Tulsa and ECU. I know this is a lot of points here. I try not to do the totals these days too, unless it's like limited action. So I think what happens here, given Tulane's strength, especially on the defensive end, remember Tulane held ECU to 19, Tulsa to 14. They got a pretty good defense. And Army, for as good as they are, they also gave up 45 to North Texas. They also gave up 28 to ECU, the same Tulane team that beat ECU 26-19. And, Tulane obviously remembers losing to Army 35-14 last year. That was a bad game for them. They were down 28-7 at one point. They were badly beaten in that game. Army rushed for 335 on them. I don't think they're going to do that here. By the way, Army rushed 335 on them and passed for 17 yards on them and beat them by like 3 touchdowns. I think there's only one way to look at this game, and I think Tulane's going to be ready for Army. They're not going to let them spoil them this year. Tulane, and they might even be on my card. Craig, Arizona here, -1 point favorite against Houston. Arizona's 4-2. Houston is 5-1. Arizona comes in winning 27-3 in their last time they played them. They do come off that loss to BYU as a 2.5-point dog at home. And Houston comes into this game coming off that win against Oklahoma State. So Arizona off a loss, Houston off of a nice win. But Houston has the revenge here. Who do you like?
It's a tough loss for Arizona. Not some losses end up being 2 losses, if you know what I mean, because Arizona was up late. They were a nice underdog, would have been a very good win, beating an undefeated BYU team. Gets to overtime, they lose. Don't get the cover, of course, for bettors as well. Facing a Houston team, that Houston's only loss is a very, very good Texas Tech team. Now, that really weren't close on that one. But I just think Arizona has a little hangover effect, like woe is me kind of thing, that they kind of let that one slip away, and I think it cost them in this one. I like Houston minus the points in this one, or +1 actually now. But I like Houston to win and cover this game. Next game, Georgia Tech and Duke. This is a really good game, and I think this is a dangerous spot for Georgia Tech, and the line tells you that. Duke -1.5, total 61.5. Can Georgia Tech find a way to stay undefeated?
Yeah, this is a fascinating game. Okay. And I'll tell you that Georgia Tech beat this team 24-14 last year. So that's going to be on their radar, right? And then the question becomes, the same question about who has Tech beaten now. All right. So Tech beat Bot Tech, not a big deal. Beat Wake, beat Temple, not a big deal. Beat Colorado, not a big deal. And beat Clemson, which is, that's fine. That's their biggest win. If your biggest win is against Clemson, I don't know this year if that's pretty good. Then you have Duke going in and beating Cal, who's 4-2, Craig. Okay. Then they went in on the road and they beat Syracuse 38-3 after Syracuse had beaten Clemson. So bear that in mind. Then this is a Duke team that beat NC State. They lost to Tulane by just 7. We've seen how good Tulane is. And that was a game where Duke just got shell-shocked 9-24. They came back, but it wasn't enough. And, of course, they had that bad loss to Illinois, which looks pretty good now, considering that Illinois, they're not a bad team. They're ranked still top 25. I think this is a dangerous game. I think Duke has the better quality wins. Duke returned 7 on defense, 5 on offense. I get it. Brent Key's an offensive lineman. He's been, always a run game coordinator. Manny Diaz, defensive specialist. I actually think Duke gets the money line here. I do. Manny Diaz held Syracuse to 3 points. He's a heck of a coach. And I think Georgia Tech was a little shaky at Wake Forest. They gave up 24 points to Temple. That's a little shaky too. And I think this is the moment that Tech falls. I'm going to back Duke here on the money line. Craig, Central Michigan +4 dog here against Bowling Green State. Central Michigan's a very unique team with a brand new coach. They are 3-3. Lost to Akron last week, and Bowling Green coming in beating Toledo 28-23. Eddie George's team has an 11.5-point dog. Eddie George is getting some good quality production here as they've covered their last 4 of 5. But they're only a 4-point favorite here. Who do you like, Craig, on a total of 43?
Yeah, we should have like an alert, like because they just beat a very good Toledo team, their rival, by the way. And now they're only a 4-point favorite against a Central Michigan team that lost to a terrible Akron team. You have to read between the lines sometimes. One, you either bet the underdog in this spot or you don't bet this game. And you just say, hey, Bowling Green, they are the better team. Clearly the better team. But this is a letdown of all letdowns. And Central Michigan is going to have their antenna up after losing to Akron last week. I'm going to take the points with the underdog here. This is as ugly as underdog it is, and that's why I like to play. I think it's a huge letdown spot for Bowling Green. Next game, Washington at Michigan. Speaking of a team that needs a bounce back, Michigan is a bounce back needer here after not looking good at USC last week. It's a noon game. Michigan's favored by 6, total of 50. Remember, this Washington team's coming from the West Coast. This is 9 a.m. in the morning in their clocks. What do you like here?
Well, yeah, bad loss for Michigan. Keep in mind that the last time they lost to Oklahoma 13-24, they took their anger out on Central Michigan, winning 63-3, losing 13-31 against USC here. A game they were in. They were down 7-14 at the half, and then the wheels fell off. Washington, of course, comes off that nice win against Rutgers, and then they bounced back from that almost loss to Maryland, but they came all the way back. So they are sitting at 5-1 now. They're facing, their only losses to Ohio State, which is a good loss. Both the teams are not ranked in the top 25. The total sits at 50. Here's the thing here. I think Michigan understands that Washington lost Ohio State 6-24. I think Michigan understands that they're still not out of it, believe it or not. because if they're able to do well in the remaining games and beat Ohio State, they'll be in, Craig. They will. So what happens here is, and Washington might be in the outside looking in. At the end of the day, Washington still almost lost to Maryland. Okay. At the end of the day, Washington still gave up 24 points to Washington State. Michigan comes in giving the most amount of points they've given up all year, 31. Michigan's going to be pissed off coming in. They beat a good Nebraska team. And I think this is an opportunity. And that loss against Oklahoma doesn't look so bad now. I think this is a game that Michigan gets up. Michigan really needs this game. And I think they win. If you ask me to pick a side, I'm going to take Michigan here because I think they can win by 10 points. And Michigan, I think it has the better players. That matters, right? All right, Craig. Oklahoma here, 5-point chalk on the road against South Carolina. Oklahoma could use this win. They are 5-1. They come off that tough loss to Texas in a rivalry game that it wasn't close. Texas ended up beating them 23-6. So coming off the first loss of the year. And man, how quickly does the fortunes change, man? They dropped them like a bad habit, didn't they, in the rankings? They dropped them. They were just waiting to drop them. They dropped them to 14 right out of the bat. South Carolina comes in, tough year for the South Carolina coach, losing 10-20 to LSU. So South Carolina off a loss, Oklahoma off a loss. These two teams met last year when South Carolina won 35-9. Who do you like, Craig?
Tough spot for Oklahoma. Mateer, before he got injured, a lot of people had him as the Heisman favorite. He comes back they thought he was going to be out another couple of weeks. So maybe they rushed him back, and he threw 3 interceptions against a pretty good Texas defense. Now they have to go on the road and get back up after you lose into your rival. I just wish they would have probably waited for Mateer because I don't think they were beating Texas either way. Texas, that was a must-win after they lost to Florida the week before. So to me, I think this is a very, very tough spot. South Carolina needs a good win. Coach Beamer and company, after a good year last year where they were basically 1 win away from getting into the last playoff spot probably, I think South Carolina, this is kind of like the game circled, like we got to win this game. I think they get it done. Let's take the underdog here and sprinkle on the money line. I think South Carolina +5. In a defensive battle, by the way, we see 43.5. I think it's going to be very low scoring. Two pretty good defenses. West Virginia at Central Florida. This is a 1 o'clock game. West Virginia had been not good this year. Central Florida, not that much better. Central Florida favored by 7, total 47. They did lose to Cincinnati last week. I did watch that game. Central Florida kind of made it interesting at least. What do you like here?
Yeah, I mean, Central Florida was down 3-17 at the half, and then they fell short. Rich Rod's first year has been pretty interesting. West Virginia, 5 starters on offense coming back and 7 on defense. UCF returned little on offense, but Rich Rod, of course, is in his second stint in West Virginia. He's the one who's kind of pioneered that no huddle zone read spread offense, and which worked at Arizona, Michigan, Jacksonville State. Should have been the coach at Alabama, but didn't want to go there.
Didn't work at Michigan.
Well, I should say that it got him into Michigan. He didn't succeed at Michigan, but it did work at Jacksonville State. Of course, isn't it funny how it's really coaches versus coaches? Against competition at Jacksonville State, he dominated, right? And then he goes to the big boy coaching, right? The Big Ten or whatever, and he goes to Michigan and he struggled there. And Arizona didn't work either. I'm glad Alabama didn't get him. But in the end, your coaching's prowess really depends on where you're coaching and who you're coaching against, right? Which conference you're coaching against. And when you play the big boys, it gets a lot harder. But I will tell you this. I don't trust Scott Frost as a coach. Okay. And I don't know how he had success in his first time around. I just think that people weren't used to a system, but they've gotten used to a system where somebody's been using a system more often enough that someone has gotten used to his system. All right. And I'm impressed by West Virginia by the fact that they played BYU relatively tough and lost by 2 touchdowns. They were down 10-28 in that game, but I didn't think they just got beat to a pulp or anything like that. They rushed for 156 yards. West Virginia did. He's turning him into a program that likes to, rush the ball pretty well. West Virginia has played a tough schedule, Craig. They lost to Kansas. They lost to Utah. They lost to BYU. They beat Pittsburgh, Craig, and that's a huge win now. They lost to Ohio, and you know how Ohio's 3-3. I've been impressed with how hard that they played. And then you have a UCF team that, they beat, UNC. They also lost to Kansas and Kansas State and et cetera. But I got to be honest with you. I think this is a West Virginia team that can probably hang, and you're going to give me a touchdown with them coming off of a loss. It's not a bad idea here. And yeah, I'm going to take Rich Rod's experience here. I'm going to take West Virginia plus the 7. Craig, Kent State here is a 25-point dog to Toledo on a total of 51.5. Kent State coming off a big win against Massachusetts, 42-6 in a game they were only favored by 1.5, and they crushed them. Toledo off a loss to Bowling Green State. Bad loss, Craig. They were 11.5-point chalk coming in. They were 13.5-point chalk to Western Michigan, and then they got mad and they lost that game, and they beat Akron 45-3. Now they were 11.5-point chalk, and they lost to this Kent State team. How do you think they bounce back here?
Big. I love them in the first half. Very simple. Don't overthink this game. Toledo's a very good team. They just lost their rival. Rivalry games, you throw the records and the spreads out the window. They always end up closer than you thought. Look what's happened to Michigan, Ohio State the last few years. Michigan's probably not as good, but they found ways to beat Ohio State. Throw that game out the window, play the first half, take Toledo. It's like 13.5. I think they mow them down in the first half. I know Kent State got a win last week. That UMass team is bad, and Kent State's not that much better. Give me Toledo in the first half, -13. Next game, Buffalo and UMass in the MAC here. Buffalo is favored by 17. Total 44. What do you like here?
Yeah, you know me, I'm shying away from totals for the time being. So Buffalo here hooking up against Eastern, or they played Eastern Michigan and they won 31-30, but they were 10-point favorites and they didn't cover. They were coming off a loss against Connecticut and Troy, tough losses. In fact, they haven't covered since September the 6th, to be honest with you. So it's been more than a month since Buffalo covered a game. UMass, though, has been really bad. They're 0-6. Craig, they lost to Iowa, they lost to Missouri, they lost to Western Michigan and Kent State. What if I told you that Massachusetts has lost 10-plus games in a row, and lately they've scored 7, 6, 3, and 6 points? Okay, that's bad. Buffalo beat them 34-3 last year too. Buffalo coming off a 31-30 win as well. They returned 14 starters, 5 on offense, 9 on defense under Coach Lembo. Lembo, obviously. You have UMass is led by a first-year coach as well. It's one of those games where if you want to lay it, and I think you have to lay it, right? Because Lembo used to be, he played center at Georgetown. This is a guy that used to coach tight ends and special teams. And in his first year at Buffalo, he was 9-4. And he was also an offensive coordinator. I just don't think Massachusetts can keep up with the scoring. You have an offensive coordinator here, and that's just simple as it is. So I'm going to back Buffalo here, -17. Craig, Purdue here hooking up against Northwestern. Purdue, a +3 dog. Coming around a little bit, I think. They've lost 3 in a row, but they, Notre Dame, Illinois, and Minnesota. It's going to take some while to get that team kind of up to date as far as players-wise. Northwestern, of course, coming off 3 big wins, Craig. They're 4-2. They beat UCLA. They beat Louisiana-Monroe. They beat Penn State. They are the team that got James Franklin finally fired. And they really cured cancer. I feel like they really accomplished something that most teams couldn't do. The crazy thing is Northwestern beat this team 26-20 last year in overtime, but Purdue only a 3-point dog. Who do you like?
Love Purdue. Love them. Northwestern, that's the best win they've had in forever. And UCLA was bad when they beat them, and UL-Monroe, they should beat them. This Purdue team, they were right in that game with Minnesota. They were right there nip and tuck. They just don't quite have the horses against most teams. That's not the case when it faces Northwestern. They're pretty equal on talent, which is rare. They're just Coach Odom doesn't have the horses yet. But this one he does. I like Purdue to get this outright win. I'm not even messing with the points. Let's take Purdue on the money line. Troy we just speak about UL-Monroe. You want to say how bad they are? They're a 6-point underdog at home facing Troy here. Total 46.5. What do you like here?
Troy, big wins against Buffalo. They were a dog. South Alabama, they were a dog. Texas State, they were a dog. They've won 3 straight games as underdogs here. And so now they finally come in as a favorite. This is a Louisiana-Monroe team that beat them 13-9 last year. Louisiana-Monroe losing to Coastal Carolina, losing to Northwestern, lost to Alabama 0-73 in a game that if that was the game that could have gotten Kalen DeBoer fired, right? Even if that game was remotely close, he might have been even more on the hot seat. But of course, he knew that and he turned things around there. I think what happens here, what you have to understand is you have Louisiana-Monroe returns 6 on offense and 6 on defense. Troy returns 4 all Sun Belt honorees. Louisiana-Monroe's coach is a former offensive coordinator and a QB coach at UAB. Troy's head coach, of course, is Jared Parker. Parker served as an offensive coordinator, prior to this as well. I think what happens here is that Troy probably gets it done. I like the fact that Troy has come in as 3 straight underdogs. and won 3 straight games. Troy, we knew was pretty good when they faced Clemson and lost by 11, right? We knew that their loss against Memphis was pretty decent too, 7-28. And I thought they played pretty well. You got to understand that Troy, their defense, I feel like was pretty darn good in those games. I like the fact that Troy gave up 41 points to Texas State in their last game. That's the most points they've given up all year, even more than what they gave up to Clemson and to Memphis. And with Louisiana-Monroe coming off back-to-back losses, I don't think it gets any easier. And Troy has revenge from that 13-9 loss last year. Give me Troy here, Craig. Craig, SMU faces Clemson. SMU, the ACC school, SMU comes in as a 9-point dog to Clemson. They did beat Stanford and Syracuse in back-to-back games. Clemson looking to right the ship here. They were 14-point chalk against UNC, and Boston College won 38-10 and 41-10. And Clemson beat them 34-31 in a pretty close game last year. Who do you like?
Remember, this was the ACC championship game last year. So this is the one that got Clemson into the playoffs. If they would have lost, they would not have went. SMU went either way. Win or lost, they were going. I like SMU in this spot. It's a big bounce back spot. Both these teams have burned a lot of money. I think 1-5 against the spread's SMU, and 2-4 is Clemson. So it's like they have not been good. Clemson is 0-3 at home against the spread as well. SMU no better on the road, 0-2 against the spread. So you have to kind of pick your poison in this one. Neither one of them have been good for bettors. But I like getting the extra points here. This is just not a great Clemson team. I think if Dabo gets this team to 6 wins, 7 wins, you probably have to say they just weren't as good as we thought in a probably average ACC, to be very honest. I think SMU gets it done here. I think they have a chance to win this game, but I do think they cover the big number of 9. Next game, we'll try to speed these up. We've got a couple of slower games, and then we've got some really big ones ahead of us here towards the end of this video. Northern Illinois at Ohio. Ohio's big favorite here, -12, total 41.5. I think Ohio is the best team in the MAC. Do they take care of business here?
Yeah, Northern Illinois won 23-13 last year. NIU, of course, lost to Eastern Michigan, Miami of Ohio, San Diego State. They've lost 5 in a row. Ohio comes into this game having lost to Ball State as a 14.5-point chalk. They're going to be ticked off coming in. The last time they did something, and remember, this is an Ohio team that lost to this team about 2 years ago as well. That's going to make them mad. You combine that with the fact that Ohio is led by an offensive coordinator and he used to be an associate head coach. He used to be a former running backs coach as well. And then Northern Illinois is coached by Thomas Hammock, who I don't think is very creative in his game planning at all. And the fact that Northern Illinois, remember, this is a team that only scored 3, 14, and 10 points lately. Ohio has a lot of talent, and Ohio beat Bowling Green State by 15 as well. Give me Ohio -12, Craig. Craig, Wyoming comes in this game as a +4 dog. I know you're not a fan of Wyoming right now, given last week, but Wyoming comes in as a +4 dog here against Air Force 3-3 team. Facing a 1-5 team in Air Force. Interesting that the 1-5 team is the one that's favored by 4 points. And these two teams met last year with Wyoming winning 31-19. Who do you like?
This Air Force defense stinks, but their offense is super talented. I mean, they scored right with UNLV. UNLV just got the ball last and won the game. Wyoming cost me last week. This was my 7-unit play. I had San Jose State. They were up 28-14 going in to score. Pick 6 the other way. 2 missed field goals later by San Jose State, and they lose outright in regulation. That doesn't happen this week. I think Air Force wins, and I think the over of those two, I like the over better. This is an Air Force team that's going to score 37+, but they're going to give up 30+. So I like the over 58.5 as the stronger of those two plays. Texas A&M and Arkansas next game here at 3:30. Texas A&M is favored by 7.5, 61.5 the total. This might be a little trap spot, and you're looking ahead for Texas A&M, undefeated Texas A&M. Do they overlook Arkansas here?
Yeah, I mean, they have LSU on deck. You're right about that. And this is an A&M team that beat them 21-17 last year and just beat Florida 34-17 and beat Mississippi State as well. I will tell you this. I think Bobby Petrino is going to be someone you're going to have to look at. And I think they were really harsh on Sam Pittman, to be honest with you. They only lost to Ole Miss by 6. Memphis is a top 25 team in my book. They lost to them by 1. And it's not just my book. They're top 20. They're 22nd and 20th in the country right now. And this is a team that, they lost badly to Notre Dame because Notre Dame wanted to prove a point that they can throttle a middle of the road SEC team. And it's just a bad situation for them. So I think Arkansas steps up here. I mean, they were great against Tennessee, 31-34 loss. It was a game where Arkansas was really well balanced, 240 rushing, 256 passing. I think they can definitely go toe-to-toe with anybody when it comes to scoring points. So if you want to give me plus 7.5 here for a team that has nothing to lose and they're 2-4, and, Arkansas understands that if they can pull off one of these games, who knows what they can do. So they could probably pull something off here. I'm going to take the plus 7.5 here. Give me Arkansas. Craig, Coastal Carolina hooking against App State here. Coastal Carolina coming in as a 10-point dog in this game. Bear in mind that you have a Coastal Carolina team that, beat Louisiana-Monroe 23-8 last game. App State coming off that nice win against Georgia State 41-20. Coastal Carolina winning 38-24 last year. Who do you like here, Craig?
I mean, you're giving me double digits. I even see some 10.5s out there, by the way, with Coastal Carolina. This is a game you hold your nose. I think you take Coastal Carolina plus the 10.5. I think App State is, people still remember that Michigan win, so they're always wanting to bet App State, and they have been really good since then even. But this isn't one of the great App State teams of the last 5 or 6 years. This is probably one of the lower teams. I think Coastal Carolina is a live underdog here at plus 10. I just think this is a much closer game. I think this really should be like -6 App State. So I'm going to take the 10.5, search it around. I definitely see some 10.5s out there. Talk about a bad game. Next game we look at here in the MAC, Akron. How is Akron only a 1-point underdog? They are not a good team. Well, that tells you how bad Ball State is. Ball State -1, total 42.5. Hold your nose. What do you like?
Well, I mean, the fact that you have Akron here who lost to Miami of Ohio 7-20, but beat Central Michigan in between. Maybe Akron is turning the corner possibly. Ball State, of course, comes off their worst loss of the year, though, losing to Western Michigan 0-42. They did beat Ohio at one point. They lost to Connecticut 25-31, only as a 6-point dog. I'm sorry, as a 21-point dog, they lost by 6 points, which is impressive. And they've covered, both. Ball State is actually 4-2 ATS this year. These two teams haven't met since 2021 as well. I'm a little surprised that Ball State is only a -1 point favorite. Craig, I actually think, I was impressed with Akron's win over Central Michigan, 28-22. And I know Ball State hung in against Connecticut, but I just think Connecticut didn't take them seriously, to be honest with you. And then they came back to reality against Western Michigan. They are coming off their worst loss of the year. I think what happens here is that I'm going to go with Akron. I know it sounds crazy here, but I'm going to back Akron here because I was just really impressed with the fact that this team, even against Miami of Ohio, they were only down 3-0 at one point, and they were only a 10.5-point dog coming in. So I'm going to back Akron here plus the 1. Craig, Temple here minus the 12 against Charlotte. Temple, of course, 3-3 so far this year. Had a great game against Navy, losing by 1 point as a 10-point chalk. They've covered 6 of their last 7. Charlotte coming in, losing to Army 7-24. They've lost 3 in a row coming in as well. These two teams haven't met since 2016. Who do you like?
Yeah, I mean, everybody in the Brothers probably going to be on Temple, 64% already as we film this on Tuesday night, late night Tuesday. No, Charlotte has no chance. This is how teams like Temple, why they're bad. They play up, they get up for good teams. All of a sudden, they almost win last week against a pretty good Navy team. And then all of a sudden, they're going to come in this week and overlook this Charlotte team. Charlotte, there's not a lot of possession in Charlotte games. I think this is a win by the skin of their teeth late by Temple, but they don't cover. Give me Charlotte plus the 12. Hold your nose on this one. This is not a great Charlotte team, but I do think Temple's looking past this one. Speaking about a bad team, in the Big Ten, I think this might be bottom 3 team in the team is Michigan State. Indiana, though, this is the biggest letdown spot of their lives after winning at Oregon last week. -27 here, total 52.5. Can they find a way to still cover if they overlook a bad Michigan State team?
Yeah, I'm going to back Michigan State here, but let me tell you something. This is a game where I think Indiana is going to be looking ahead to UCLA. I think they understand UCLA has gotten better. And I think that game actually worries Coach Kurt. I do. Because it's a new offensive system, they're going to have to prepare for it. Michigan State comes off of that loss, 13-38 against UCLA. They've lost 3 in a row at this point. Indiana's been getting a couple of number 1 votes, Craig, in the polling. They've gotten one poll. They've had 3 number 1 votes. And I can see why. They beat Illinois 63-10. They beat Iowa 20-15. And they beat Oregon on the road. Those are impressive wins. And it's funny because, this is a team that, they are perfect 6-0. Michigan State, of course, They have Michigan on deck, but they can't be looking ahead from this game. I think the only way to look at it is I'm not taking it, but you got to take Michigan State plus the points here, assuming that they got throttled against UCLA, one of their worst losses of the year. Even the USC and the Nebraska losses weren't that bad. This was a bad loss to UCLA at home. I like Michigan State plus the 27. Craig, Texas State here, 3-point chalk against Marshall. 64.5 is the total. Texas State coming off a loss, 41-48 against Troy. Marshall coming off a nice win against Old Dominion. Who do you like here?
That was a great win against Old Dominion. There were people whispering like Old Dominion wins out. They're going to end up in potentially the at large, from the round outside of the Power Four conferences to the playoffs. Obviously, that didn't happen. Marshall took care of that. Early in the year, I would have thought, if you had predicted, I would have thought they would have been favored by 7.5 because I thought Texas State was going to be pretty good and I thought Marshall was going to be terrible. That's just not been the case. Marshall has continued to get better. It's a big letdown spot. I get it, but you're giving me 3 points at home. Huntington, West Virginia, you've ever been there, there ain't nothing but Marshall football. That's the only thing people care about there. I think Marshall fans show up, and I think Marshall gets this win. We'll take the 3 just in case. Speaking of Old Dominion off the big letdown. They were looking forward, I'm sure, to this really good matchup against a very good James Madison team. James Madison's favored by 1, total of 47.5. What do you like here?
Yeah, James Madison, big wins against Louisiana-Lafayette and Georgia State and Georgia Southern. They did lose 14-28 against Louisville, which is a pretty good loss. Old Dominion, bad loss against Marshall, right? 48 points, the most they've given up all year long. They were 14.5-point chalk. And you're right. Some whispers, if they want out, meaning they, eventually they beat James Madison too. What would that mean? Coach Ricky Rain over at Old Dominion, he's an offensive coordinator, right? He worked at Penn State and Mandy before this. James Madison has Bob Chesney in his second year. Used to be a defensive back coach. And, I think what probably happens here is you're going to see an Old Dominion team that's going to be really mad coming in. They could be hungover. But keep in mind, James Madison beat him 35-32 last year. And, Ricky Ray knows that loss. I like the fact this team gives up the most amount of points they've given up all year long. It's not by accident this team gave up, posted 45 points against Virginia Tech, which got their Virginia Tech coach fired. But I think that James Madison, they don't have any impressive wins, Craig. And I believe that Old Dominion does have those impressive wins, such as against Liberty or Virginia Tech or Coastal Carolina and so on. I'm going to back Old Dominion here to bounce back. Craig, Ole Miss coming in as a 7.5-point underdog to Georgia here. That is significant considering Ole Miss is ranked 5th in the country and Georgia is ranked 7th in the country. And Georgia, a heavy favorite here. Ole Miss did not look good against Washington State at all. It's 33-point chalk. They barely won that game, but they were definitely looking ahead to this game. When these two teams met last year, Ole Miss beat them 28-10. Who do you like?
Big revenge spot for Georgia, and Georgia has no wiggle room left. This is a must-win for Georgia. If Georgia wins this game, you start looking ahead. Georgia's probably going to be – they're going to be in the playoffs again. Like, if they win out, they'll be in the playoffs. They'll have plenty of good quality wins. I think Ole Miss is even better than last year, though. And, yes, because they played poorly last week, I think we're actually getting the hook here because of that, because people are like, oh, maybe this isn't that good a team. This is a very good Ole Miss team. I know they're not nearly as good away from home. I get it. But eventually, Lane Kiffin and company's got to, go on the road. I think Georgia wins, but I think Ole Miss keeps this, that offense of theirs keeps them in games. It's just they're going to be able to score against pretty much anybody. And I trust that Ole Miss offense can maybe get us a backdoor cover late. Give me Ole Miss plus 7.5. Big letdown spot maybe for Ohio State against their former player and former interim coach and the former defensive coordinator and Luke Fickell. And Luke Fickell's dead man walking there. But Ohio State's favored by 25, total 40.5. Can they even keep it close?
Well, Ohio State has Penn State on deck, and they've just been phenomenal. They beat Illinois as well, 34-16. They've covered. If you're an Ohio State backer, man, they've just covered and covered and covered. They're 5-0-1 ATS coming in. They definitely know what the line is. If you're keep in mind if you're Wisconsin here, you're coming off of scoring 0 points against Iowa. You did cover against Michigan 10-24. You played your hearts out, but it's just not enough, man. It's just not enough. Ryan Day, he's been the coach at Ohio State since 2019. It's such a shame for Wisconsin. They returned 9 starters, 4 on offense and 5 on defense. Yeah, I think what probably happens here is that you're going to see If this game goes towards Wisconsin, when Wisconsin covers, games have a tendency to go under, and this game's totaled at 40.5, and I think they're just going to slow this game down to a snail's pace. I'm going to take a rare total here, and I'm going to back the under in this game because they cannot keep up with Ohio State's offense. Craig, UNLV facing Boise State here. UNLV coming into this contest as a 11.5-point dog to Boise State. UNLV, of course, perfect, Craig, and that is significant. UNLV still has not gotten ranked, as they're not ranking this team despite being 6-0. If they win this game, they will rank them here. Boise State, of course, comes into this game beating New Mexico 41-25. Boise State beat this team 21-7 last year. Do you think that this team continues to get disrespected, or do you think that UNLV comes through here as a huge 11.5-point dog?
Well, I would play UNLV plus the points. I think this is a disrespect that Coach Mullen won't have to do a whole lot of getting them up for this game. It's like, look how big, look how good you guys have played, and look at this underdog spot. But the defense is terrible. They just have to outscore people. I mean, they gave up – Miami of Ohio is not a good offense. They gave up 38 and had to come back on that one. Last week, I mean, the Air Force offense is really good, but they gave up 48 to Air Force at home. I think you take the over in this spot, over 63.5. I know it's big. It's big for a reason. UNLV can score, and UNLV defense is terrible. Take the over in this matchup. If you want the side, I would take UNLV plus the points. UTSA and North Texas is the next game we're looking at. Another 3:30 game. Seems like there's a million of them this week. This is the last one of those, I promise. North Texas -4, total 67.5. North Texas coming off a stinker last week. What do you think here?
Yeah, UTSA beat this team 48-27 last time around. UTSA, of course, beating Rice 61-13. It's a game that you have a UTSA team that's 3-3. North Texas is 5-1. North Texas, of course, losing 36-63 against South Florida. But don't fault them, man, because South Florida is a good team. South Florida is the same team that beat Florida. South Florida is the same team that beat Boise State. And my lean was on North Texas in that game. I can easily see North Texas covering this game. I think this is a bit of a, I understand UTSA, throttled Rice. I get it. They also lost a tight game to Texas State, and they play Texas A&M tough too. I understand all of that. UTSA does return 11 starters, though. I get that too. Head coach Jeff Traylor's been at UTSA for his 6th year. You have Eric Morris here, who's in his 3rd year. He used to be the offensive coordinator over at Washington State and Texas Tech prior to coming here. And you have so you have two sort of offensive-minded coaches coming in on a total of 67.5 as well. In a way, I think UTSA is probably going to be a pretty good underdog. Remember, UTSA beat this team 48-27 last year, and North Texas, they gave up 63 points last game, but they also gave up 38 points to Army as well. Maybe they bounce back on defense, but I got to tell you, I think UTSA, only being a 4-point dog coming in, I lean on North Texas, but I also lean on the over. If you ask me which one I lean more, this is the highest total that UTSA has had all year. I'd probably take the over in this game. And if you ask me for a side, I would back North Texas with revenge and coming off of a loss. Greg, Memphis here, 21.5-point chalk against UAB on a 63.5-point total. Memphis is 6-0, Craig, and that's pretty significant. Memphis is ranked 22 in the country. Their marquee wins probably than Arkansas win. UAB coming in after that 33-53 loss to FAU. Who do you like?
They got a big matchup next week. Memphis does facing USF. Whoever wins that game probably will be the at-large non-Power 5 team, unless one of them would lose, unless whoever wins loses again. So I do think Memphis is a lookover spot. Also, Trent Dilfer got fired, so it's one of my favorite angles is when a coach gets fired, you play that team that week. They usually play for the assistant coaches that are picking up the pieces. I think Memphis dominates, but puts the 2nd and 3rd team in late and allows UAB to kind of get an ugly cover. Let's take UAB plus the points. Memphis got a big one on store next week I think it's at USF, but it's against USF for sure. Now, everybody, it's 20% off this week for your promo code. So use the promo code SPICY20. That is good on the individual plays for $30 for a top play or the week pass of football, $99. You get 20% off. Good luck. Next game, really good matchup. Texas Tech at Arizona State. If you look ahead, this is the last game I think Texas Tech potentially will lose. I really think they'll win out other than this. Texas Tech favored by 9, total 51.5. What do you like?
Texas Tech, of course, is 6-0 coming in. This is a team that's ranked 7th and 8th in the country in a couple of polls. So bear that in mind. Arizona State is, of course, 4-2. Texas Tech beating Kansas, Houston, Utah, Oregon State, Kent. All that is fine. Their most impressive win is probably against Utah and maybe Kansas. Arizona State coming off that bad loss to Utah, 10-42. They did beat TCU and Baylor and so on. Texas Tech beat them 30-22. I got to tell you something. I think Arizona State gets up to face an undefeated team here. I think Arizona State's really pissed off coming off of a bad loss. I like the fact that Texas Tech coming off a big win against Kansas is a 14-point chalk. I mean, you have a coach here in Dillingham that is a great coach. He's a former offensive coordinator at Oregon, Auburn, FSU, and Memphis. There's no slight on him. Joey McGuire is a good coach here in his 4th year at Texas Tech. Arizona State did return 7 on offense, 3 on defense. Don't you think that Arizona State can put up some points and hang tough? I think they can. I mean, especially with a coach like Dillingham. Give me Arizona State plus the 9 here against Texas Tech. Craig, Mississippi State is an 8.5-point dog against Florida. Bear in mind, Mississippi State's had a pretty good year, better than most would give them credit for. They are sitting at 4-2. Florida 2-4. They come off a loss against A&M 9-31. They had covered 6 in a row coming in. They lost to Tennessee by just 7. Florida coming off a loss to A&M as well, 17-34. Who do you like?
This is a great spot for Mississippi State. They had a bye last week. They've been really good. That loss or that win at home against Arizona State early in the year is going to look good at the end of the year. I do think Arizona State quarterback was out last week, might be out this week. So kind of give them a little, breathing room there with Arizona State if they lose some of these games, because obviously if you're going to the backup quarterback. But I like Mississippi State. Florida gave it all last week. They were kind of like, that was kind of their season. If they get that, they're 3-3. You start looking ahead. You're like, oh, we'll at least make the bowl. You look at Florida's record ahead of them, they're probably not going to be bowl bound. I think coaching changes in the cards there again. Have you heard this again? Let's take Mississippi State. I think you're going to take them with the points, but I would sprinkle on the money line. I do think they have a real shot to win this game as an 8.5-point underdog. Southern Miss minus 3.5 at Louisiana here. Not the greatest game, even though Southern Miss has been better than we thought, 4-2. What do you like here?
Southern Miss 4-2, Louisiana Lafayette 2-4. Southern Miss, coming off that nice one against Georgia Southern and Jacksonville State. They have won 4 of their last 5. Louisiana Lafayette losing to James Madison, but that's a good loss. They're a good team. They beat Marshall as well, 54-51. The Raging Cajuns here beat Southern Miss 23-13 last year, so Southern Miss has that revenge coming in. And it's interesting they put him on the hook here. Charles Huff is a good coach. He had a 10-win Sun Belt Championship here team in Marshall before moving over here. I think what probably happens here is that you get a Southern Miss team here with the brand new coach coming off back-to-back wins. Louisiana Lafayette, though, comes off that tough loss to James Madison, which I thought was pretty impressive. It was a game they were actually up 14-7 as an 18.5-point dog. Just imagine that. So bear that in mind. On a total of 53.5, I can see Louisiana Lafayette being an active dog here. I can see Southern Miss, a team that gave up 35 to Georgia Southern and 25 to Jacksonville State, doing pretty well here. I can see Louisiana only scoring 14 points last game to James Madison, a team that put up 54 against Marshall and 31 against Eastern Michigan, showing up here too on the offensive side. Give me the over here, Craig.
Don't forget about the premium products we have at YouTube. We have 3 levels of premium. Level 1 is Lenny's video every day, $4.99. Plus, you get early access to all the football, and we do some live content that's exclusive to our members. Level 2 is Indian Cowboy, where you get extra plays from Indian Cowboy every day, video format, and you can talk to them back and forth. And then level 3, you get all 3 levels. Level 2, you actually get level 1 as well. So you get all 3 levels as you move up, and you get 3 expert plays every day from Doc Sports experts, one of them being from me. So make sure you check that out. Very simple, $49.99 a month for the level 3.
Craig, Oregon coming in as a 17-point chalk coming off that loss against Indiana. Rutgers coming in off of that 3 straight losses to Iowa, Minnesota, and Washington. A 5-1 team facing a 3-3 team here. Oregon did drop down to 8th in the nation. What do you like here?
One of the old-time betting angles that has worked for generations has worked really well this year. Last week it was Iowa State. When teams go, they're 5-0, lose, you play against them in the next game. It's just that like, oh man, we lost. Oh, and then they lose the next game too, and they definitely don't cover. I think that's the spot for Oregon. You lost that hard-fought game. You're looking like, oh, Rutgers, they're not that good. They are obviously way more talented. They win the game, but I just don't think they cover. I think this is a much closer game than this line suggests. You take Rutgers plus the 17 on that old-time betting angle. Washington State at Virginia, 6:30 Eastern Standard Time game. Virginia, pretty daggone good team, 5-1, 17.5-point favorites, total 56.5. This is a Washington State team that we said gave Ole Miss everything they can handle. Can they do it on the road this week?
Yeah. Washington State, of course, yes, they did play great against Ole Miss, 21-24. Maybe they're getting better. I don't know. They beat Colorado State 20-3. So bear that in mind. They did lose to Washington 24-59. But that's because they faced their former offensive coordinator. I should say that they faced their So then they faced their offensive coordinator against North Texas, and then they lost 10-59. So this is a team that is 3-3 coming in. These two teams have never met. Virginia, though, beating Louisville on the road, they're ranked 18th in the country. That was a monster win in overtime. Give them a lot of credit here. And Virginia also, of course, beating FSU and Stanford and NC State. I don't know how much I trust Washington State. I know they look great against Ole Miss. I just think Ole Miss just did not give two hoots about them. And I think that's part of the reason. Keep in mind that you have a Washington State coach here, Jimmy Rogers, who's a first-year coach. Tony Bennett has been here for a while. He used to be the former, offensive coordinator, and assistant over at Clemson as well, and a wide receivers background as well. I think what happens here is that you do not see Virginia take Washington State lightly at all. I understand that Virginia has UNC on deck as well, but I don't see, this is a Washington State team that's now covered back-to-back games, and it's been forever since they've covered 3 in a row. I don't see Virginia taking them lightly at all. They know exactly what Washington State did against Ole Miss, and I think they show up big time. This is the same Virginia team, by the way, Craig, that beat Stanford by 28, okay? So I can easily see them winning this by a wide margin here. I'm taking Virginia here. Craig, Hawaii here is a 3-point dog against Colorado State. Hawaii, of course, comes in after their big win against Utah State in Air Force. They are 5-2 now, Craig. Colorado State, of course, comes off that massive win against Fresno State. 49-21 is a 5.5-point dog. Who do you like here?
Yeah, that was a great win against Fresno. But before that, you have to say Colorado State's not a very good team. So does one win make you a good team? I don't think so. I think Hawaii, this offense, the young quarterback of Hawaii, he throws the ball like 50 times, just like Jimmy Chang. The coach is like, he's probably just like, hey, dude, I remember when I threw 50 times. And, man, he just lets them sling it, and it keeps them in games. And the defense is better than people gave them. They got several stops against Fresno State and got them the ball back. They went down and scored. They just didn't get the 2-point conversion in that game, or this team would potentially be 6-1. I like Hawaii here on the road. I think Hawaii wins this game. I think that was an aberration last week by Colorado State to beat that win, and I don't think they can follow it up. I think Hawaii gets the win here. Next game for UIC, 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time game, Georgia State at Georgia Southern. Get a little rivalry game here. Georgia Southern favored by 6.5, total 60.5. Two pretty bad teams, though. What do you like?
Yeah, 1-5 team facing a 2-4 team here. Georgia State, of course, losing to App State and James Madison and Vanderbilt. I will tell you this. Georgia Southern beat them 38-21 last year. Georgia Southern played Southern Miss pretty well. They lost to James Madison. They lost back-to-back games, so they really need this game. But at the same time, Georgia State, they are 1-5, but I'm a little surprised. It's sort of a rivalry game here. You have a team that's based in Atlanta versus a team that's based in Statesboro. And the total sitting at 16.5. That total does seem high. I don't think these coaches are going to leave anything else in the bag. I love the fact that Georgia State, put up 20 against App State last game. Georgia Southern, of course, putting up 35 against Southern Miss. They put up, 41 against Jacksonville State. I like this game to be high scoring. I can see Georgia State as an active dog. I can see this game going over the posted total. Craig and I love doing videos for you every week. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you get all of our videos every single time when you post it, so you get the best lines. As soon as we post it, people jump on it. So if you want to get it as soon as we post it, like and subscribe. Craig, Texas is back, or are they? They are minus 12-point chalk here on the road at Kentucky. Kentucky, of course, is now 2-3, losing to Georgia and South Carolina. Texas, of course, beating Oklahoma after their loss to Florida. The crazy thing is if they don't lose to Florida, things can be very, very different. Texas did beat them 31-14 last year. Who do you like?
Well, think about Texas. Even though you have 2 losses already, if you play in the SEC, you win out, they're probably going to be in the playoffs, especially a brand like Texas. I think this is a no letdown spot. because they can't afford that. With 2 losses, there's no more letdown spots available. Kentucky's bad. They want to fire Mark Stoops, but he's got a ridiculous buyout, and they don't have the kind of money. This isn't basketball in Kentucky. Football, they do not have the kind of money to buy him out and then go get a better coach. So I think they're probably going to let him at least work through the rest of this year. But I think Texas probably puts a nail in the coffin that it's sooner than later Mark Stoops is going to be gone. Give me Texas minus 12. I cannot believe 3 weeks ago we saw Penn State number 2, I think, in the country, or number 3 at worst. Now they're out of the top 25. They fire Franklin. They're an underdog at Iowa. Iowa's been good, but I don't know if Iowa should be a 3-point favorite. I really think this still should be a pick'em game. I know Penn State Owlers out for the year, the quarterback, but Iowa minus 3, total 40. How does this game go for you?
Man, how quickly do fortunes, change. Aller is out for the year. He went 13 for 20, and a lot of people say he's out for the year. I just think he feels really, really bad for getting Franklin fired. Franklin's just stuck with them and stuck with them and stuck with them to the point of getting fired. And that's the difference between Ryan Day and James Franklin. Ryan Day thought they could do better and went and got a better quarterback. And he just didn't. And James Franklin maybe was just too loyal or just wasn't creative.
Well, Aller got him within one play of playing for the national championship last year. So they're like,
so you have a guy where he did, but Ryan Day would have still thrown him under the bus. You know how Ryan Day is. So you have Penn State here, who's now lost 3 in a row. By the way, Craig, Penn State's lost 7 straight covers. You have an Iowa team here who did beat Wisconsin 37-0. They're not going to take it anything easier on Penn State. They haven't played them since 2023. I got to tell you something, though. I think Penn State, that's a lot of change in that team. Penn State, by the way, still received 22 votes to be in the top 25. Okay. So I think Penn State shows up here. I mean, you have all this talent, and I think they're going to show up here. Okay, I really do. I think they're going to show up here. And Iowa, at the end of the day, did lose to Iowa State. They lost to Indiana by 5, and I get that too. That's pretty impressive. And they're a heck of a team. But I can see here that they're playing with a backup quarterback. I get that too. But I'm going to take Penn State in this turmoil. I'm going to take them plus a 3, and I think they kind of come together as a squad. And, and we'll see where James Franklin ends up next year, the year after. I think he's going to take a year off for sure. You just don't go from Penn State to another school right away.
Got 50 million reasons to not coach.
I can easily see him pulling like a Dan Mullen and just seething for about a couple of years and then coming back strong to some SEC school who fires at least 5 coaches a season, it seems. All right, Craig, Maryland playing UCLA here. Maryland is a 3.5-point dog on the road. Maryland's had a pretty good season, right? They're 4-2. They have come out back-to-back losses to Washington, Nebraska, but they're back. They're a team that's good, right? They're not a pushover, if you will. UCLA, good in the sense that they're not like
for Maryland. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
for Maryland. They're not like 2-10 or something. UCLA, of course, coming off big wins against Michigan State and Penn State. And I'm telling you, man, UCLA with that Neuheisel coach or as that offensive coordinator, Neuheisel. So these are big wins against Penn State and Michigan State. They are 2-4. They're not going to make the playoffs, but the better question is how many they could cause some real issues for Indiana, Nebraska, and Ohio State going forward. But you're going to have more tape on them, which is going to get harder and harder. And that's the unfortunate thing is you bring in a brand new offensive coordinator who gets the reins. It's very, very hard to figure them out early, especially during the game. Who do you like here?
Maryland gave away 2 games ago. They should have beat Washington. They were up big in the fourth quarter and couldn't hold it. They weren't up against Nebraska, but they were right there. They could have won both those games. It would be 6-0. What would the line be in this game if it was 6-0? I think you take Maryland in the spot. This is the biggest letdown spot for UCLA. They were over for a reason. It wasn't just coaching. It was like the players weren't playing well. Now they're playing loose. I get it. They have confidence. I get it. I just think Maryland is for real. Not like for real, like Ohio State for real, but like you say, they're Maryland for real, which is all you need to probably cover in this game. Give me Maryland plus the points. And what I think is going to be a pretty exciting game. Probably a lot of points, by the way. Pitt and Syracuse, next game we're looking at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. Pitt favored by 11.5. Pitt's been sneaky good. I mean, like if they beat West Virginia, they would be 5-1. They were up double digits late in that game and gave that one away. Total's 54.5. Can they get this win and go to 5-2?
Pat Narduzzi used to be the defensive coordinator at Michigan State, if you remember. And then Syracuse, of course, has Fran Brown, who used to be the defensive backs coach over at Georgia, who came from Georgia. So you have 2 coaches who are, pretty good defensive coaches, but Pittsburgh, Big win against FSU, 34-31, right? And they beat Syracuse 41-13 last year. Fran Brown really needs a good game. Back-to-back tough losses to Duke and to SMU. This is a team ever since that win against Clemson, things have gone downhill for them real fast. Pittsburgh could come in and blow them out, sure. But I don't think that happens here. I think Syracuse plays their heart out. I think they kind of stay within the number here. And I can take them plus the 11.5. It's good reason to take them plus the 11.5. And I'm going to back it. So it won't be on my card, but I'm going to back them here. Craig, FAU facing South Florida. South Florida, if you remember, coming off that big win against North Texas, 63-36. They've now covered 6 of 7 and 8 of 10 games. They are 5-1. They are a legitimate team for sure. They're ranked 19th in the country. You have an FAU team, Florida Atlantic, that comes off a nice win against UAB, a nice win against Rice as well. They could show up here. And remember, South Florida does have Memphis on deck, which is that game that you alluded to earlier, a big game. By the way, Craig, the total here is 73.5. Who do you like?
I like the under, and I like the underdog here. I think USF gets up in the first half and puts it on. They have at Memphis next week. This is a huge sandwich game. North Texas was undefeated, a big high-profile game on a weekday. Now next week at Memphis, high-profile winner probably has the driver's seat to go to the championship or to the playoffs. I think this is a huge spot to look over. Give me FAU and the under. Under would be the higher of these two, under 73.5. Big game for Notre Dame. Notre Dame started 0-2 against two top 10 teams, Texas A&M and Miami, both really good. Both had chances to win that game. Notre Dame did. Notre Dame's favored by 9.5 against their rival USC, total 61.5. USC had a nice win at Michigan last week, it was at home against Michigan. What do you like here?
How quickly does everything change, right? Notre Dame, obviously, they were thinking about firing their coach at one point. They lost their first 2 games, and now they're ranked 13th in the country, and they're probably going to make it into the dance. At the very least, they're 9.5-point chalk here. I think what you should look at here is the fact that USC is 5-1, but USC only lost by 2 points to Illinois. And that's a lot of disrespect, but who has USC beaten? Yes, they beat Michigan 31-13, but the other wins against Michigan State, Purdue, Georgia Southern, Missouri State does not count, right? So then you have a Notre Dame team, and who have they beaten? They could have easily beaten A&M. They could have easily beaten Miami. They were in both those games. They did throttle Arkansas. They've been taking care of business like they're supposed to. You know how you mentioned earlier that, and they did beat USC 49-35 last year. You know how you mentioned earlier that there's no room for error for certain teams like Texas. Notre Dame is one of those teams.
Yep.
They just cannot lose this game, even though they lost to 2 top 10 teams. This is the loss that they would be held against, because they would be a top 20 team and say, if you can't beat a top 20 team, you don't deserve to be in the top 12. I think Notre Dame covers. Does USC cover? Maybe, but if I had to pick a side, it would be Notre Dame for sure, because they're not going to overlook anybody, and they're just mad at the world. Craig, it is that rivalry week, that Tennessee-Alabama game, and I always see this meme come up with this kid talking about how much he hates Tennessee, and I always laugh. It is so funny. Tennessee comes in as an 8-point dog. Tennessee, of course, beating Arkansas in their last game, maybe getting a little lucky, beating Mississippi State and UAB. Alabama, of course, taking care of business, Craig. They're 5-1 ever since that FSU loss. That big win against UGA, big win against Vanderbilt, big win against Missouri. Those are 3 huge monster wins for Alabama, no doubt about it. And this is a game that Tennessee beat them 24-17 last year. Who do you like here?
Big revenge spot. And let's remember, they really don't have a lot of room for error, even though they don't have a loss in conference yet. That Florida State loss doesn't look nearly as good now that Florida State's like 3 losses, and Norvell all of a sudden is on the hot seat. I think they take care of business here. I hate the 8 number. I wish this was 7.5 I could buy. You can't buy a whole point. It's just too many. I'm going to lay the points with Alabama because it's in a revenge spot. And I just think that Tennessee on the road, they're just not that good. Like, Tennessee probably should have an extra loss here. I think they've kind of gotten a little lucky this year in a few close games. I guess you could say they got unlucky in the Georgia game, though. They missed a field goal that should have won the game. But I like Alabama here. I think they're just too much at home at night, too. Missouri in a huge spot, because Missouri, all of a sudden, they were 5-0. They lose to Alabama last week. Now they face an Auburn team that's just not very good, just 3-3. Missouri needs to win out. Missouri's -2, total 44. Do they take care of business on the road?
Well, here's the thing about this. If Auburn had 2 losses, I feel like the refs will kind of favor them. Okay. But Auburn has 3 losses, and the SEC has a way of propelling its own teams up. Okay. So keep that in mind. And Auburn, I feel so bad for them because maybe it was a timeout. Maybe it wasn't a timeout by Kirby, but they lost by 10 to UGA. Not a bad loss. They lost by 6 to A&M. Not a bad loss. They lost by 7 to Oklahoma. I mean, these are all good losses. They lost to number 14. They lost to number 9. And they lost to number 4. Okay. And they find them, and that's the battle of the SEC. And now they find themselves 3-3. Missouri has not played anybody tough. And they lost by 3 to Alabama, but they did go toe-to-toe with Alabama, which is important. And I want to point out that they did rush for 163 on my Crimson Tide. So then you have Auburn coming in, who also has Arkansas on deck. Not a big on-deck game. Missouri, of course, has Vanderbilt on deck. I think Missouri will be prepped for this game. I think Missouri has to win this game. I think if Missouri wins this game, and then even if they lost to Vanderbilt, because they have to lose, they can only lose one game remaining between Vanderbilt, A&M, and Mississippi State, and then I think they could find themselves in. Okay, so this is a game that they have to win. So I like Missouri minus the on the money line here against Auburn. Craig, Cincinnati versus Oklahoma State here. Cincinnati laying 22 points. Cincinnati, interesting team. They're 5-1 here. Oklahoma State, of course, fired their coach Van Gundy. They're 1-5 here. Who do you like?
Big look ahead spot for Cincinnati. I get it. They're facing an Oklahoma State team that's just been really bad. Gundy's, of course, gone. But next week, they play Baylor. The week after that, Utah. Week after that, Arizona. That's Cincinnati's next 3 games. I think is a big look-over spot. I could see where Cincinnati, last week, they only scored 20-10 or something like that. I could see this week where they dominate, win 24-14, 24-17, and don't get this cover. So give me the 22 points plus Oklahoma State because Cincinnati, my Bearcats are in a big look-over spot. Really tough get a slate of games ahead of them. Holy War, the next game we have for you in Utah at BYU. BYU is a 3.5-point underdog against a really good Utah team. Total 49.5. We got an undefeated BYU team, just one loss to that really good Texas Tech team for Utah. Utah kind of needs this game. I thought Utah would be the second best team in the conference. If they go all of a sudden 2 games down, they could find themselves not even getting into the Big 12 championship. What do you like here?
Well, you have a coach here in Kyle Whittingham that is, a defensive-minded coach, right? He's been there forever, since 2005. And you have BYU's head coach, Kalani Sitake here, who's also a defensive coordinator as well. I think what happens here is Utah won that huge game against Arizona State. They've quietly covered 8 of their last 9 or 7 of their last 8. I think some of their most impressive wins have been lately, right? Blowing out Arizona State, blowing out West Virginia. Yes, losing to Texas Tech, but that definitely awoke them. And then you have BYU coming off that big win against Arizona, but they did give up 24 to West Virginia. They gave up 21 to Colorado. They gave up 13 to ECU. They've been a little shaky, and I want to point out that they've beaten Utah back-to-back year, or they beat them in 2024, 22-21, and that's going to really tick off this Utah team because Utah was up 21-10 in that game, 21-13 in that game going into the fourth quarter, and they ended up losing that game. And I don't see that happening here, and that was a game where they were actually at home. I think Utah is going to come in very focused, and I'm going to lay the -3.5 here. Craig, we have the final 3 games here. Nevada here on the road against New Mexico. Nevada, 12-point dog on a total of 49. Who do you like?
This is a bad Nevada team. I knew they weren't going to be great, but I did not think they'd be 1-5 at this point. I thought they could be a maybe 1 or 2 game 500 under 500 team. New Mexico has been better than I thought, even though. I actually think that New Mexico State game was a pretty impressive win for them. I think New Mexico State we saw almost won here on weekday game this week. That was a tough loss at Boise State. I think they bounced back in a big way this week. 11.5. I think no problem. New Mexico lays the wood. Last game, Florida State at Stanford. Florida State, all of a sudden, Norvell is on the hot seat after being I think it was number 5 in the country at one point before that loss at Virginia. They are a 17.5-point favorite. Must-win spot, total 53.5. Norvell doesn't get on the plane if they lose this one. That's what I'm predicting. Good luck.
100%. 100%. I mean, these coaches, man, you almost have to take a year off or 2 years off after you get fired because it just tears your gut so much. Every play is life or death for these guys, some of these guys at this point. Because if you think about it, if there's so many plays in a game and you lose 3 straight, you're out as a head coach of a Power 5 school that has expectations. I mean, you could lose back-to-back games, but you can't lose 3 straight, and that is crazy. You can't even have a down year, and nevertheless down 3 games. So you have a Florida State team that lost to Pittsburgh, Craig. That's a good loss. I mean, Pittsburgh is not a bad team. They lost to Miami, who's top 5. They lost to Virginia, who's now top 15. And they beat Alabama at the beginning of the year. Stanford, of course, coached by Frank Reich, gave up 34 to SMU, who's not a good team. It's a team that lost by 28 to Virginia. This is a game in which you are right. These two teams have never played each other. They're going all the way to the other side of the country. They need to win, and they need to win big. I like Florida State.
Yep, there we go. Those are all the games for week 8 of college football. Yeah, we are officially past the halfway point now after this week. For everybody, if you haven't done so, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. If you haven't done so, what are you waiting for? Get in 20% off code SPICY20 saves you 20% off. Get the week pass instead of $99 for all the football plays from either IC or myself. They're just $79 for a week if you use that 20% off code, or you can use it on the top plays that are just $30 if you want that. All right, guys, that's what we have for this week. Good luck. See you next week.